This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, 212th Trooper, Silas 1610, Carmen CJ, Runescribble, and Papa Podo, and brought to you by 212th Trooper requested this topic. If there is a video you want me to make, just head over to Patreon and become a channel member, and select the Pickled Producer tier, since among other benefits, you'll get to make a video request every month, be it the continuation of an existing series or a brand new story. Now, before we get into today's story, I just want to ask you to do me a favor. Hit that like button, since it tells YouTube you enjoy what I do, and check whether you're subscribed since only about a quarter of my viewers are, and it's a free way to keep up to date with all my content. In return, I'll do all I can to keep making regular quality content for you. Thanks, and let's hop in. Now that he knows Shoto is safe, Endeavor's eyes fall upon Redestro, a bottomless hatred having already taken root there that turns them into pits of deep blue flame reminiscent of Derby. In contrast, the MLA commander merely sneers, having already defeated this foe once, as he prepares to let out one of his signature smug quips. Though, before he can, Endeavour has already fired off a jet burn, clearly having no time for games, as he is here to incinerate the man who took his son. Unfortunately, in his stressed out state, Redestro is able to match this with one of his dark energy blasts, so when darkness and light collide, they cancel each other out. Seeing this, the disgraced number one next moves in for a flash fire fist, ducking under the villain's superior reach and landing the burning blow right on his chin, only to be struck by a gut shot that threatens to reduce his ribs to powder with several fracturing on the spot. Nonetheless, Endeavour does not yield, as turning his tumble backwards into flight, he launches himself higher into the air. Then, when he is above his foe, he unleashes a hell spider down upon the already damaged floor, so that it caves in beneath Re-Destro, sending him plummeting like the twice clones before him. However, this is the man who has brought Hero Society to its knees through strategy and cunning alone, and so demonstrating these wiles even in this enraged form, the MLA leader deftly lashes out, wrapping his giant hand around the hero's leg so that he joins him for the fall. Briefly, Endeavour tries to scorch his way to freedom, though when it becomes clear that he cannot generate enough heat to make Redestro recoil before they hit the ground, he changes tack, blasting himself downwards and into Redestro's stomach to increase their fall speed before hammering away at the villain with brutal blow after brutal blow, right up until they strike the ground a dozen stories below. Such an impact shakes the entire tower, while outside in the plaza, those MLA soldiers who have not yet gone through Kurogiri's portal are quick to turn and offer their help to their Supreme Commander, or at least they try to, as before the first of them can even make it through the door, they are left sprawled out on the ground, with their last thoughts being of a sharp pain, followed by a disconcerting lack of control. Elsewhere, even more members of the MLA are falling, as in his hubris, Redestro had not thought to nominate anyone outside his inner circle to lead the assault should he and his lieutenants be defeated, meaning that in the wake of the twice clones dissipating, the chain of command within the battalions has all but broken down. While this does little to affect zones that have already been captured, in contested battlefields like Minato and Hosu it makes all the difference in the world, as the heroes put everything they have into pushing the invaders back. In particular, Bakugou is relentless in blasting the MLA, as while he is furious that the real Redestro was never here to begin with, he is more determined than ever to find him, which means he is to finish off these extras as quickly as he can to move on to the main event. Meanwhile in Kamino, the villains are not backing down, as while their leaders are gone, Spinner has stepped up and taken charge, coordinating his allies and rallying them around the promise that they were made, freedom from persecution and tyranny. Feeling responsible for not beating him when they clashed before, Dick breaks off from the main fighting force, and after getting a boost from Achako, demonstrates why he is called the acrobatics hero, as somersaulting over the battle line he engages with Spinner once again. As he does, he questions if the scowled man really believes that Redestro actually intends to liberate heteromorphs, though this is met with a snarl, as Spinner admits that he doesn't trust the big-nosed bastard as far as he can throw him. But at this point, anything's gotta be better than what Hero Society's offering him and his kind. Sympathetically, Dick admits that he knows the feeling, since he too once took a stand against the establishment, but Redestro is not going to bring the change Spinner wants. He's just using him, and when he's gotten what he wants, he'll toss him aside. Sighing deeply as his blades meet Nightwing's Eskrima sticks once again, Spinner admits that he knows, since he once had a leader who truly cared about him. But he's gone now, probably dead at this point, so there's not much he can do except keep moving forward. Briefly, Dick prepares to suggest an alternative, to come over to their side, since he doesn't seem evil, just lost. Though, before he can, Fat Gum steps in, taking over the fight and leaving the American hero to find a new opponent. As while I'd love to help Spinner, his first priority must be to protecting the people of Japan from the MLA. Back in Deika, Endeavour and Re-Destro have resumed the fight, as having risen to his feet first, the number one hero wastes no time in readying another Flashfire Fist. However, this time Redestro is ready for him, kicking out with one of his monstrous legs and sending the hero crashing into a marble pillar with enough force to crack it. Seeing a chance to end this nuisance once and for all, the Supreme Commander then fires off another Dark Energy Blast, though when Endeavour matches it with his Jet Burn, there is something different about it. A literal white heat that allows it to cut through the darkness and engulf the massive ogre in a plume of fire, scorching his already darkly mottled skin pitch black. Pressing this advantage, Endeavour continues hurling flames at the villain, declaring that he is here to burn his whole empire to ashes, all the while the flames on his face and costume continue to grow paler and hotter with each passing hit. For a moment, it seems as though this will be enough to end the villain's threat once and for all, though what seems and what is are two very different things. A lesson Redestro is quick to remind his opponent, as he lashes out with his monstrously long arms, landing a gut shot that makes the hero cough up blood. Though before the Supreme Commander can land a follow-up body blow that might just kill the pro, a new fighter enters the fray. Shoto, as having created an ice ramp, he descends and launches a burst of flame to strike Redestro right where his father's last blow did. Furiously, Endeavour bellows at his son to leave and get to safety, though showing the stubborn streak he inherited from him, the younger Todoroki refuses, claiming he is a hero too, and that he intends to fight beside Endeavour and save the world, even going so far as to call him Dad for the first time in years. Moved by this, and by his son's pure heroic ideals that are completely devoid of the ego and ambition that have always driven him, Endeavour accepts, forming up with Shoto so they can launch a father-son Hell's Curtain. Against the might of two Todorokis, Redestro's grip on the battle begins to slip, as well he has immense physical endurance that allows him to withstand their attacks. When they split up and attack from different angles, his brawler style of fighting cannot keep up with both, meaning he is always struck by one of them. Not only that, but Shoto's ice adds a challenging component, as it can be used to create ice walls that Redestro must expend energy to shatter, or else keep him in place by freezing his hands or feet so Endeavour can land a particularly devastating hit. However, the Supreme Commander does have one small advantage that neither father nor son is aware of. Getten, who is a fellow ice user and cousin of Shoto's through his mother's bloodline, and since Redestro trained him personally, he is more familiar with the boy's quirk than the Todorokis expect, so that when Shoto attempts to use his ice for mobility to get around him, the villain is ready, feigning ignorance only to turn and blast him with a beam of dark energy at the last moment. Thanks to putting up an ice wall, Shoto is not killed, though he is blasted into the back of the atrium and out of the fight, and as Endeavour turns back to call out for his son, Redestro strikes, lashing out with his long arms and planting one on either side of the number one's head. Then, with a sneer that an idiot like Enji Todoroki could never defeat him, he begins to squeeze. The scream that follows even reaches the server room several floors up, an unholy mix of agony and defiance, as Endeavour refuses to die before he has saved his son and stopped this monster, though just how long he can hold on is anyone's guess when fighting a behemoth like Re-Destro. Recognizing this, Bruce and Hawks come to the same decision, and so turning to Izuku, instruct him to finish locating the succession document while they break away to help Endeavour. Due to their different styles, Bruce does this by slipping into the shadows and descending through an empty elevator shaft to land behind the Supreme Commander, while in contrast, Hawks comes in loud, flying above Redestro and firing several feathers down at him as he taunts that he was a spy all along, and that the supposed genius villain failed to see through his ruse. As the blonde man had hoped, this is enough to make the MLA Commander drop Endeavour, saving his life. Though, there is one thing he failed to consider. The revelation that a member of his trusted inner circle has not only betrayed him, but has been operating against him this whole time, is enough to induce an incredible amount of stress, and with that, an incredible boost in power. As before Hawks can even react, Re-Destro has fired another of his darkness blasts, cleanly shearing the hero's left wing in half and sending him crashing to the ground. Though he is not there for long, as lifting the spy into the air, the Supreme Commander takes a sadistic pleasure in tearing the wings from his back, along with a chunk of his shoulder blades. In fact, the only reason Hawks is not killed then and there is thanks to Bruce's quick intervention, as by lobbing an explosive at the ogre's face, he's able to temporarily blind him, allowing for a follow-up swing kick that puts Redestro's focus on him. Squaring up, the Dark Knight swings a series of body blows at Redestro. However, when the villain hits back, he is sent flying. Ruefully, Bruce wishes that Project Beyond was already finished, though knowing that wishing achieves nothing, he instead gets back into the fray, using his bat blades again, only for them to break against Redestro's mottled hide. Seeing that brute force is not the answer, Bruce next activates his shock gauntlets, hoping that he can stun the villain and take him down that way, as such tricks have worked on big brutish enemies before. However, Re-Destro is unlike any foe the Dark Knight has ever had, as while the electric shocks are uncomfortable, they are far from paralyzing, while in contrast, any blow he lands on Bruce is the man seeing stars. Fortunately, Bruce Wayne, among his many other talents, is also an incredibly well-trained and skilled martial artist, with this allowing him to avoid any particularly devastating blows, while also striking back with a series of hit-and-run maneuvers. Not only that, but he has a sense of verticality his foe lacks, as when Redestro bears down upon him, he is able to grapple to a higher level and deploy more batarangs or explosives, or else swing between pillars and land drop kicks on his enemy's face. Admittedly, this does little to bring him closer to victory, as conditions prevent the Caped Crusader from truly utilizing his skills to the fullest, such as the fact that he cannot afford to be absent from the battlefield long enough to vanish into the shadows and launch a true sneak attack, as if he has gone too long, Redestro will kill one of his downed allies. And speaking of, while surveying the field, Bruce is pleased to see that Endeavour is back on his feet and seemingly preparing an ultimate move, having also dragged the unconscious Hawks over to where Shoto is slumped. Meaning for now, the Dark Knight does not have to beat Redestro, he just has to keep his eyes on him for a little longer. However, this is easier said than done. As for all his flaws, the Supreme Commander is a clever man, learning and adapting as he fights, with this compounding his physical advantage, as like with Hawks, he just needs one good hit to put Bruce down. Recognizing this, Redestro shifts his focus, analyzing his enemy's patterns, as while he is supposedly the world's smartest man, he is still just a man, and men are fallible. Men make mistakes, especially when they're hurting and tired and prone to fall back on familiar patterns drilled into them through training. And unfortunately, Redestro is right here, as eventually Bruce does repeat a move, swinging in for a kick like he did earlier in the fight, with this being all the Supreme Commander needs, as reaching out, he catches his foe's foot in one hand and his thigh in the other. Then, he starts to twist, turning Bruce's foot 180 degrees while his bones and ligaments strain desperately to keep things in their proper place. However, no amount of sinew can stand up to stress, as something deep inside Bruce's leg gives way with a crack, a dry, splintering snap that seems to echo inside his skull. With the floodgate now open, his knee is next to buckle, folding the wrong way, while several fractures tear through the bones, splitting into 4 or 5 pieces each. For a second, blinding agony courses through the Dark Knight's brain, as with a sickening lurch he is dropped to the ground and made to stare at his destroyed foot, which is now pointing in a direction no human foot ever should point, while his mangled leg is contorted into a grotesque spiral that almost defies comprehension. Meanwhile, Redestro prepares to stomp on his head, leering that this is proof of the immutable difference between those blessed with quirks and those who lack them. Though, before he can, the pillar Endeavour was knocked into finally collapses and tumbles forward, falling at the precise right angle to make the Supreme Commander jump back while not hitting Bruce. Knowing better than to believe this was merely a coincidence, the Dark Knight thanks Jean for his help. While phasing into view just long enough to pull his wounded friend out of the direct line of fire, the Martian hero coyly retorts that he did not do anything that would violate his vow. He simply accelerated something that was already in motion to ensure that Bruce's proper sentence is upheld. Exile, not execution. Meanwhile, Redestro has recovered from this momentary setback, and so now looks around for his next victim, though it seems his time terrorizing others is at an end. As when a voice furiously calls his name, the Supreme Commander turns to face Endeavour, whose flames have now fully transformed from raging crimson to a pure pristine white. However, he is not the only one to notice this, as from his slumped position, Shoto also sees his father's new state, and being a flame user himself, he knows precisely what this means, that Endeavour has been gathering heat inside him like Toya did in Kamino. Likewise, remembering the consequence of such an act, Shoto urgently begs his father not to keep going, since he's not ready to lose him, not when he can see that he's trying to be better. However, shaking his head, Endeavour replies that he cannot be better than the prideful, wrathful egotist he has forged himself into, but he can finally do better, and more importantly, do right by Shoto, since he knows he will grow into a truly great hero, and a better man than he could ever hope to be. Then, with this declaration, he calls out his attack. White-hot prominence burn. At once, the world goes white, as a miniature sun blooms around Endeavour, casting light throughout the atrium, while a beam of pure thermonuclear heat consumes Redestro even in his massive monster form. In the face of such power, everyone is forced to avert their eyes. That is aside from Endeavour, who stares straight ahead, though what he sees is not what he expects. The hazy form of All Might smiling at him from the middle of the white-hot blaze. In that moment, the new number one feels as though he understands his predecessor in a way he never could before. The only shame is that it came too late for both of them. With this thought, he stops holding the flames of his attack at bay, allowing them to lick and consume his body, turning into the fuel for the inferno that will destroy Re-Destro, and with it, the entire Meta Liberation Army. In the aftermath of this attack, the Supreme Commander is flat on his back, having reverted to his regular size and state, while his body is covered head to toe in 3rd and in some cases 4th degree burns. However, he is still alive, albeit barely, with it falling to the surviving heroes to decide what to do with him. But it seems fate still has plans for the man that do not include death or imprisonment, or at least Curious does, as having made her own unseen way down to the battlefield, she now bears witness to her leader's critical condition. Though refusing to let their dream die today, she employs one last contingency plan, a scheme she and Redestro devised in the unlikely event they ever needed to flee while also destroying all records of their activities. And this is to activate her quirk, as having long ago touched dozens of carefully chosen places throughout the tower, she is able to set off a chain reaction of explosions that cause the building to collapse in on itself, forcing the heroes to flee while she runs to Redestro. Unfortunately, some of these explosions take place in and around the server room, with this immediately compromising the system. Urgently, Izuku does everything he can to salvage it, using his own not inconsiderable intellect, along with everything Bruce taught him about computer systems to keep things running long enough to finish his search. However, nothing in his Batman training covered how to scour a server that is literally on fire while the ceiling is collapsing around him, forcing the boy to make the difficult decision to abandon the mission, as the information he seeks won't be worth much if he and it are destroyed. To this end, he activates his grappler and smashes through a nearby window before extending his cape so that he might glide to the ground. And from the looks of things, he did this not a moment too soon, as the server room has been reduced to a flaming wreck that promptly collapses in on itself, leaving Izuku very grateful to be alive. Nonetheless, this failure is a bitter pill to swallow, since unless there is a copy of the succession document hidden somewhere off-site, then he has just lost Hawks' one hope of bringing down the MLA. And speaking of Hawks, when he touches down in the plaza, he sees the wing hero along with Bruce and Shoto, while another conspicuously green figure vanishes through the pavement, having seemingly carried the trio to safety. Worriedly, the green-haired youth asks what happened, with Shoto relaying the events of the battle, as well as its cost. While laying a hand on his shoulder, Izuku gives his friend his deepest condolences, since while Endeavour may not have been a very good man, he proved himself a true hero in the end. Unsurprisingly, the collapse of Deika's most central structure does not go unnoticed, with any heroes who are not still fighting rushing to secure the city, though to their disappointment, when they begin digging through the rubble of the tower, they are unable to find the body of Re-Destro dead or alive, with he and Curious having seemingly vanished, meaning the war goes on. However, at the very least, it will have to be conducted without two of the MLA's top lieutenants, as Trumpet and Skeptic somehow miraculously survived both the Madman's Parade and the destruction of the tower, resulting in them being taken into custody with plans to interrogate them for any clues that might lead to the whereabouts of the Supreme Commander. Due to the secrecy of his mission, Hawks is likewise arrested, and while Shoto offers to speak in his defense since he doesn't deserve to go to prison for something the Commission ordered him to do, the now wingless wing hero declines the offer, stating that if he's learned one thing from his time in the MLA, it's the importance of a propaganda victory. So while he can't do much in the fight with his quirk factor destroyed, at least let him use his poison reputation to give their side a little win, since after everything they've lost today, the people of Japan deserve to rest a little easier knowing their heroes captured the traitorous false number one. Respecting this and Hawks' convictions, the burned boy does not protest, instead returning to the site of the collapse as the charred remains of Endeavour's body are pulled from the wreckage. Knowing that his family deserves to know of his passing regardless of what they might think of him, Shoto takes the corpse, while in turn Bruce is likewise taken away, being rushed to Hosu General Hospital, where it is revealed that Re-Destro completely shattered his leg in almost a dozen places, while inflicting such severe nerve and cartilage damage that while he may eventually learn to walk again with a cane, insane, Bruce's days of running across rooftops and fighting villains as Batman are over. Though, perversely, he is one of the lucky ones, as when night falls and the fighting finally dies down, hundreds of heroes are dead or injured, and roughly half of the country is now occupied by the MLA, who have enacted their policy of total quirk liberation, turning cities and towns into a new Wild West, where the strong are free to do as they please to the weak. In fact, it is only thanks to the Batmen convincing twice to disperse the clones of Re-Destro and his lieutenants that the whole country wasn't lost, with Dick and Achako informing the pair of this when they reached the hospital, while also delivering the good news that Kamino was one of the areas where the MLA were completely repelled. Though, as each member of the Bat family and almost everyone in Japan are aware, this is not the end, but rather the beginning of a new Cold War, as everyone knows that neither the MLA nor the heroes will be satisfied with the current state of affairs. So sooner or later, fighting must begin again. But for now, it is a game of watching and waiting, as both sides need to consolidate their power, all the while wondering who will have the strength and the daring to strike first. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Deika City, Kai Chisaki overhauls his way into Redestro's private villa. As he had anticipated, what he seeks is here, having searched high and low for it in the tower only to come up empty. Stepping into the living room, he surveys his prize with cruel amusement, the frozen form of Tomura Shigaraki. And while it is true that once he would have liked nothing more than to kill the mad dog or keep him as a trophy the way Redestro has, now he might be of some use to him. After all, they both have reasons to want the MLA destroyed, so for now, he'll let Chisaki live and sick him on his enemies, since what better way is there to fight the liberationist diseased, quirk-loving rhetoric than with an all-consuming sickness like decay? Placing his hands on the ice sculpture, Chisaki wastes no time overhauling it, so that a moment later Shigaraki falls to the ground. Showing that his imprisonment has not robbed him of his bad attitude, the scruffy man growls that he can't see, before demanding to know where he is. Flatly, Chisaki replies that he's in Redestro's house, and when Shigaraki pivots and demands to know who freed him, the former Yakuza boss Riley replies, "Someone who loathes you." At once, Shigaraki understands, snarling Chisaki's name in a tone of deepest dislike, though before Overhaul can snipe back, a deep chuckle causes both men to look around in suspicion. Though, thankfully, it is not the Supreme Commander watching them, as stepping from the shadows, the hero killer Stain admits that he's impressed Chisaki was able to get Shigaraki out without killing him, since he's been trying to figure out how he'd do that for a while. Coldly, the masked man asks if he's a friend of Tomura's, though smirking slightly, Stain retorts that he has every reason to despise the little upstart, while turning his blind eyes upon the hero killer, Shigaraki snarls that the feeling's mutual. Paying this no mind, Stain then continues that luckily for the former League of Villains leader, he hates Redestro more, as the man is a blatant hypocrite, whose ideals stand in direct contradiction to the sort of society he intends to create. And since he figured Shigaraki would want some payback for being turned into a popsicle, he's here to make an alliance with the enemy of his enemy. Shrewdly, Chisaki comments that it seems they all have a common cause here, so perhaps a temporary alliance would be in their best interest, though he has to wonder what the hero killer has to offer them, since he couldn't even unfreeze the brat. Leering a little at this challenge, Stain reveals that he is not alone, as after clearing out those scumbags in the plaza, he made a highly valuable friend by promising to rescue Shigaraki. As it turns out, this is Kurogiri, and as the Misty Nomu strides forth, he nods that he is pleased to see Master Tomura alive, though not necessarily well. Groaning that he can fix this, Chisaki then hoists Shigaraki to his feet, while overhauling him once more to restore his health, even if he is quick to snark that the pale man's looks and personality leave much to be desired. Curtly, Shigaraki grunts that Overhaul better not be expecting any thanks for that. While rolling his eyes, Chisaki retorts the best thanks will be to use that disgusting quirk of his to kill Re-Destro. Nodding his own support for such a plan, Stain then joins his new allies in the center of the room and instructs Kurogiri to make them a portal, so that a moment later, the villainous trio are gone, having vanished into the darkness, where they can begin putting their sinister machinations into motion. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.